Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 204 of the True Crime All the Time Unsolved podcast. I'm Mike Ferguson, and with me, as always, is my partner in true crime, Mike Gibson. Gibby, how are you?
Hey, I'm doing good, man. How about you?
Doing great.
Yeah?
Happy to be here.
Well, happy to have you.
We got some new equipment that we're recording on, so let's see how that goes.
Yeah.
Hopefully the sound is good.
I tried to convince you to get the other piece of equipment, you know, the one that was more of my type of budget, but you didn't want to have to pedal.
A tin can hooked to a rubber band that you twirl with your finger?
Exactly.
No, I wasn't up for that.
No.
So we went with something different. We continue to see some amazing Patreon support. Let's give our shout outs. We had Michelle Culp.
Hey, Michelle.
Megan O'Halloran.
What's going on, O'Halloran?
Ariel Leonard.
Hey, Ariel.
Jamie Worthen.
Hey, thank you, Jamie.
Janice Payne.
What's going on, Janice?
Kelly Lawson.
Well, hi, Kelly.
Shelley.
Good old Shelly.
Sean Hartman.
Hey, Sean.
Aiden Brunker.
What's up, Aiden?
Matt.
Well, just good old Matt.
Julie Hughes.
What's going on, Julie?
Ida Helm.
Thank you, Ida.
Don Cornelius.
Ah, the Cornelius.
Audrey Rose Gilbert.
Hey, Audrey.
Abdirahman.
I think it's Abdirahman.
Abdirahman. Could be.
Yeah.
Could be.
Unlike the noodle company.
Lauren Campbell.
Hey, Lauren.
Lauren Lacey.
What's going on, Lacey?
Brittany.
Hey, Brittany.
Stephen Woolston.
Hey, SW.
Caitlin Gravel.
Thank you, Caitlin.
Barb Slansky.
Hey, Slansky.
Francie Hull.
Well, thank you, Francie.
Carmen Hurley.
Hey, Carmen.
And last but not least, Jennifer.
Well, appreciate that, Jennifer.
And then if we go back into the vault, Gibbs.
Yeah.
This week we selected Amber Scott.
Hey, Amber.
So we appreciate all the new support, the continued support on Patreon. It's all amazing. We had some great PayPal donations as well from Jennifer Benson.
Well, appreciate that, Jennifer.
Jennifer Warmuth.
What? Another Jennifer.
Carolyn Burkhart.
Hey, Carolyn.
And Lissa Lehman.
Well, appreciate that, Lissa.
Yep, we appreciate all that as well. Gibbs, right now on True Crime All the Time, we've got an episode out on the Freeman family murder.
Oh, man.
Brutal.
Yeah.
We're talking about two sons with extreme violent urges who committed a horrific act against their family.
Sure did.
And we really got a lot of extremes in this episode, right? We have a family who's involved in the Jehovah's Witness religion. Their sons are involved, but ultimately become neo-Nazis, skinheads,
Yeah.
white supremacists. And it's a really strange family dynamic that goes horribly wrong.
It does.
It's also one of those episodes where parents are going to be like, ooh, man, what would I do in that situation? How would I act? How would I try to discipline these kids?
Parents' nightmare.
It is. It actually is. All right, buddy. Are you ready to get into this episode of True Crime All the Time Unsolved?
Man, I am.
We're talking about the 2011 unsolved murder of Carina Saunders in Bethany, Oklahoma. Gibbs, murders occur every day around the world. We know that. Unfortunately, many of those go unsolved. But this one we're talking about in this episode is one of the more gruesome unsolved murders.
It really is.
That of Carina Brianne Saunders, a 19-year-old woman who was found dismembered, stuffed inside two bags behind a grocery store in Bethany, Oklahoma in October of 2011. Carina, at an early age, was incredibly talented and bright. She enjoyed singing and participated in the honors choir at her high school. She was also very smart, winning multiple spelling bees and math competitions. Carina aspired to become an opera singer due to her passion for singing, but she also planned to become an accountant if that dream didn't work out.
Those are two very different things.
Yeah.
Opera singer or an accountant.
Yeah, very different. But I also think that's very smart because, okay, how many people become opera singers? A lot of people can sing.
Yeah.
But how many opera singers are there that make money? Not many.
I didn't make much money at it.
No, you weren't that good at it either.
I really wasn't.
But to have a fallback option, right? To get to that level of planning, it's almost like an 11-year-old boy saying, I'm going to grow up and play in the NFL. But if that doesn't work out, I'm going to be a pediatrician.
There you go.
But how many 11-year-olds say that? It's I'm going to be the star quarterback. I'm going to play in the major leagues and be a shortstop or a pitcher. Dreams are dreams.
Sure.
And at that age, not a lot of fallback plans normally.
No.
For most kids. Carina was dearly loved by her family and friends. She was described as a very friendly and lovely person. Her father described her as full of smiles and joy. Her mother stated that she was such a good child. She was so smart, so beautiful. She didn't get into trouble at school. She was just an engaging, fun-loving, free spirit. At school, her friends described her as likable and popular. Gibbs, after graduating from high school, Carina started experimenting with recreational drugs, which led to a drug addiction.
Well, I think a lot of kids go down that path. You get into that recreational drug usage, and unfortunately, sometimes it goes the wrong direction.
You mean leading to addiction?
Right.
Yeah. Or just kind of destroying your life, too.
Sure.
I mean, sometimes that goes hand in hand.
Well, sometimes you can go to the bigger, badder drugs too.
Yeah. I mean, I've known a lot of people who have done drugs. Some people who smoked a lot of weed.
Yeah.
But still were very high functioning.
Yeah.
It never really affected them negatively. But people that maybe start out with weed go on to do things like coke and heroin and crack and whatever else, crank, whatever else is out there.
A little Molly here and there.
Some of those are very addictive and obviously can be very destructive. But fortunately, Carina recognized the detrimental effects of her drug use and admitted herself to a drug rehabilitation center at the start of 2011. On September 8th, 2011, Carina left the rehabilitation center with the determination to take back her life. She shared with her family that she wanted to return to school to help achieve her dreams. Inspired to take control of her life, Carina and her mother, Margie Queen, attended a church ceremony on September 18th, 2011. This was just 10 days after Carina left rehab. The mass lifted Carina's spirits, and she later posted on social media that she gave her life to Christ. After church, Margie dropped Carina off at her cousin Catherine Jo Bloodworth's house. But little did Margie know, this would be the last time she would see her daughter. Carina and Catherine had an extremely close relationship. Their families described them really as more like sisters than cousins.
There's a lot of families that have those type of relations. I know for my son, him and my nephew, they're like brothers. They're so close, you would just think they're brothers, and they do everything together. So I can see that. We all know people that have those type of relationships.
To me, Gibbs, a lot of that has to do with how close the siblings are. If you've got a close set of brothers, a close set of sisters, well, a lot more likely that the cousins are going to be close.
Sure.
And do things together. I can definitely see that.
And it depends on the families if they spend time with their relatives, right?
Sure.
There's some people, they don't have any interaction with their other side of the family.
And they don't want to.
No.
What I did find strange was that it was noted that Carina did not own a cell phone, but rather depended on Catherine's phone, or she had to use a computer to log into social media for communication.
It's a rarity.
Yeah, to me, that seems like a rarity for a 19-year-old in the year 2011.
Yeah.
I mean, cell phones are pretty ubiquitous at that point.
Yeah.
For a 19-year-old not to have a cell phone at that point in time seems strange.
You wonder how you can function without a cell phone.
Well, and the other thing was Carina didn't drive. So she was dependent on family and friends to get places. And we talked about the fact that she didn't have a cell phone. That seemed odd. That seems like it would have been pretty rare. The driving thing to me is a little less rare, and it really surprises me. You know, I think a lot of kids over the last, let's say 10 years or so, they're not in as big a hurry to get their driver's license at 16.
No.
Some not even at 17, 18.
And parents are probably okay with that in one sense, that they don't have to pay all those high insurance rates. On the other side, it's kind of nice when your kid's driving that they can run some errands for you.
Well, and you know, you don't have to take them to every soccer practice. And in my daughter's case, dance practice. She's now able to drive herself to dance. It's one of the things that I don't get, because I think people of our generation were chomping at the bit at 16 or whatever the age was at the time.
Yeah.
For me, it was 16. The day I turned 16, I wanted to get my damn license.
Yeah, exactly.
Because I wanted that freedom, and I wanted to be able to, you know, experience life away from my parents and hang out with my friends a little bit easier. Kids today don't seem as in a bigger rush to do it. Maybe it has something to do with social media and the fact that they don't visit all that much in person anyway.
Well, that's true. That's true.
So you can FaceTime, you can text, you can tweet, you can TikTok and do all that stuff.
We needed our license so we can actually get in a car to go somewhere to see somebody face to face for a little bit.
On September 28th, Catherine dropped Carina off at the local Taco Bell parking lot. Carina told Catherine that she was meeting up with a man named Kenny Richards, whom she had previously been talking to. Carina got into Richards' Chevy Blazer and they drove off. There was no way Catherine could have known this was the last time she would ever see her cousin Carina alive. Catherine and Carina's family became worried because they noticed that she did not post anything on social media after that day, September 28th. Now, Gibbs, we couldn't really find any information on what Carina's family did on the days after they realized that she wasn't posting online. I think we can assume that family and friends searched for her, but we couldn't find anything in papers or in any articles that mentioned it. On October 9th, Catherine received a threatening text message from a man named Kyle Savage that read, quote, "I'm going to bury you next to Carina." Okay, that's about as ominous as you can get.
Sure is.
For me, in two different ways. Number one, you're threatening me personally with bodily harm.
Right.
And number two, you're alluding to the fact that you've buried my cousin / best friend, Carina.
Yeah.
When we don't know where she is, we haven't heard from her. So Catherine was very concerned, and she told Carina's mother, Margie, about it. Together, they decided to file a missing persons report on October 10th. They also told the police about the text message Catherine received. Police determined that Kyle Savage had been messaging Carina on social media weeks before her disappearance. Carina's family members also started a Facebook page called Carina Come Home, which is now today known as Justice for Carina Saunders. Family, friends, and the police asked for information about Carina's whereabouts. An old high school friend named Keegan came forward detailing that he had seen Carina at the Studio 41 apartment complex on October 6th and 7th. During Carina's stay at the apartment complex, Keegan invited her to his apartment to catch up. After he learned about her recovery from substance abuse, Keegan said he felt a lot of sympathy towards his old friend and he really wanted to help her. Keegan mentioned that during Carina's visit, he noticed that she was carrying a small bag which contained all of her personal belongings. So he offered her his green duffel bag, which would give her more room to carry things. Then on October 8th, Carina was spotted on the Newcastle Casino's surveillance cameras, getting into a red four-door Ford truck with the big brush grill and spotlights on top.
I'm picturing that roadhouse truck, that they drive around, the big
with
4x4.
the roll, like the big roll bars on the top of the bed.
That's what I'm picturing.
The lights. The problem is the driver was never identified. But on the video, you can see that he has 2 full tattoo sleeves. So basically, each arm is a tattoo sleeve.
Yeah, which is pretty common today.
It is common today. I don't know. Was it less common in 2011? Was it more identifiable back then? Today, a lot of people are into that. And they were back then too. I wonder if it would have stood out a little bit more in 2011 than it does in 2021.
Yeah, I think that's possible.
But obviously not enough for anyone to come forward and identify this person.
But I think if you put the two together, the Ford truck, and if the driver has 2 sleeve tattoos, then at that point, you're headed somewhere.
Well, I think you're narrowing down your list of potential candidates by a large degree.
Yeah.
Right? How many guys in the area drive this big 4-door red truck with the spotlights and also have both arms tatted up completely? But I think the most chilling moment of the footage was that there was a car parked next to the Ford truck, which was full of women screaming and begging Carina not to get in the truck. And to this day, Gibbs, that group of women remains unidentified as well.
I'm kind of thinking that the quality of the video maybe wasn't that good.
I'm thinking something has to be going on along those lines, because how are we not able to identify anyone? This tatted up guy driving the big truck, all of these women in the car, either you couldn't see their faces at all.
Yeah.
Or for whatever reason, nobody was willing to come forward and say who these people were. On October 13th, 2011, animal rescue workers were feeding and trying to capture some stray cats in the field behind a Bethany Homeland grocery store. They smelled a strong odor while they were in the field trying to catch these cats. And ultimately, 2 individuals stumbled upon 2 bags. They called the Bethany police about the odor in the bags. One bag was a green-colored Nike duffel bag, and the other was a small black laundry-type bag. Inside these 2 bags were parts of a dismembered woman. The remains were wrapped in plastic and then stuffed inside the 2 bags.
Not something you would want to come across?
No, I think you and I have talked about this repeatedly. You're just out doing your everyday normal type of activity.
Yeah.
And you're walking through a field, or you're walking down the street and you see a bag. Well, naturally, what are you going to do?
Yeah.
Everybody's a little curious.
Sure.
You're going to open the bag. Let's see what's going on. Maybe there's some identification in the bag. I can get it back to its rightful owner. Maybe there's $500,000 in drug money.
You never know.
I'm never going to know unless I open this bag. But just imagine it turns out to be the dismembered body of a woman, or a man for that matter. That's going to change your day real quick.
Oh, yeah.
And, maybe provide the fuel for nightmares for a long time.
And like many people have said that have had the opportunity to smell what a dead body smells like, it's something they never forget.
Yeah, you hear that all the time, especially from police officers who arrive on a scene and know instantly that there's a dead body.
Yeah.
Because of that very distinct odor. The Bethany police were positive the remains were of 19-year-old Carina Saunders, but they and the medical examiner needed her dental records to confirm this. On October 14th, investigators met with her family to get the dental records. I think they knew, Gibbs, that the remains were Carina based on tattoos, her face. But one thing that caught me as very strange was that her killer or killers cut her hair noticeably, like kind of very short.
Yeah.
for some reason.
It's definitely a bizarre thing to do before you decide to kill somebody.
But it wasn't until October 17th that the medical examiner officially declared that the remains were in fact Carina Brianna Saunders. The medical examiner had a lot of work to do to try to figure out how she had died, and it would be months before they released her official cause of death. They did, however, say she most likely was killed elsewhere sometime around October 10th and then dumped in the field behind the grocery store. At this point, the Bethany police brought in the Oklahoma State Bureau of Investigation, or OSBI, to assist with investigating her brutal murder. They identified the green Nike duffel bag that part of her remains were stuffed into as the bag that had belonged to Keegan, her high school friend. The other smaller bag was believed to be hers. So here's something else to imagine. You're a friend of someone that is found brutally murdered, dismembered, and that friend's body parts are found in a duffel bag that you gave her.
Yeah.
I mean, once you learn that, on top of the fact that your friend was just killed in an extremely brutal way, that connection, I think, would haunt you.
Definitely freak you out.
Okay, I gave this bag to her. How did the killers get it? And then ultimately, they left her body inside of it. I'm gonna struggle with that.
Sure.
Even though, let's say I didn't have anything to do with the murder, I didn't even have anything to do with her death, just that connection alone, I think I would struggle with.
That used to be my bag. They found her in my bag.
Yeah.
Yeah.
After the body was indeed confirmed to be Carina, her loved ones were distraught, as you can imagine. Her family and friends were unable to see her body due to its dismembered state. A few days after her discovery, family and friends gathered to host a candlelight vigil in remembrance of Carina Saunders.
Yeah, it's one thing to find out that your child's been murdered, but to find out how she was murdered.
And to know that you can't go see the body.
Yeah.
Not that that is something that any parent wants to do, but I think if your child is murdered or dies in, let's say, an accident, you're going to want to see him one last time. The investigators began talking with family and friends. They looked into Kenny Richards, the man that she got into the Chevy Blazer with at the Taco Bell parking lot back on September 28th. Kenny was a friend of Carina's and knew her family and friends. He told the police that, yes, he did pick her up at the Taco Bell parking lot. They hung out for a few hours, and then he dropped her off at the Studio 41 apartment complex. Investigators cleared Kenny Richards as a suspect at that time. Investigators then looked into the threatening text message that Catherine received days before Carina's remains were discovered. The text message sent by Kyle Savage saying he was going to bury Catherine next to Carina. Kyle was brought in for questioning, and he told investigators that he and Carina had a relationship about 2 years earlier. But he told investigators he had nothing to do with her murder. He also said the text he sent was not meant for Catherine. Instead, it was meant for a man he thought was dating Carina. And investigators eventually ruled out Kyle Savage as a suspect at that time as well.
But that's a strange thing to send anybody.
It is. It's much stranger to send it to Catherine knowingly.
Yeah.
Than to send it to a man who you believe was dating Carina. I don't know if he said this, but maybe by extension, he thought this man was responsible for her death. And so he's saying, I'm going to get you. But, if that's the case, how does he know where Carina's buried?
Yeah.
There's still something that is unexplainable no matter how you spin it with that text.
And how does he even know that she's dead and buried? And you have to remember he sent that text on October 9th.
again, very strange, right? To make sense of this text, her remains weren't found to the 13th, and the medical examiner estimated that she died most likely around the 10th. So I think as a general rule, you shouldn't send texts like that to anyone because if you don't know what's going on, you're not making yourself look good when someone turns up dead.
Yeah, it's a problem.
Days after discovering Carina's body, the police received a tip. A family member of 21-year-old Cody Perez reported that Cody and Carina were in a relationship and they had seen Carina visit Cody's home. During the investigation into Cody's involvement, police learned that Cody had pawned a few of his kitchen knives around 1:30 p.m. on October 10th.
Well, that's a strange item to pawn.
Well, it's a very strange item to pawn given the date, right? October 10th. That's the date that authorities believe Carina was killed. But I also agree, Gibbs, kitchen knives just in and of themselves seem like a very strange item to pawn.
Yeah.
I'm not going to a pawn shop to buy my kitchen knives.
No.
First of all, not real big on used knives to cut up my meats and things like that.
Kind of want to know where they came from.
Yeah, I'd kind of like them to be new or, if used by myself only.
And I think if I used those in a crime, I certainly wouldn't pawn them. I would just go ahead and dispose of them.
If you had your wits about you.
Sure.
I also don't buy used toilet seats. That's just a general rule that I have.
That's a very strange thing to buy.
Yeah.
Any home I've ever bought, that's one of the first things that go is the whole toilet. I don't even keep the toilet. I get rid of the whole thing. Yeah. I know people think that's weird. At least replace the toilet seat.
Yes.
But I replace the whole thing.
Oh, so you go all out.
I do.
But back to these knives, right? So what are police going to think? It's a possibility that one or more of these knives could be linked to Carina's murder. So police submitted them to the OSBI laboratory to be tested, but the test came back negative. The lab found no indication of human blood. Now, I think on top of this, Cody had an alibi to help support his innocence, and he was soon ruled out as a suspect. So you got 2 or 3 individuals here who, at the very least, have piqued the interest of investigators. They've done some things that seem a little strange, but they've all been ruled out. So investigators are now back at square one. But I think there's no doubt investigators looked hard at a number of people in the days after Carina's remains were discovered. On November 7th, 2011, police arrested 33-year-old Jimmy Lee Massey for drug trafficking, and he was sent to jail to await trial for distributing meth. But as police were investigating him, they learned from some sources on the street that Massey had allegedly kidnapped and killed Carina. So on December 20th, investigators arrested Jimmy Lee Massey while he was sitting in jail for the first-degree murder of Carina Saunders. They also charged him with the kidnapping, assault, and battery related to an abduction of an unidentified witness. This witness told investigators that on the night of October 9th, she was standing on the street outside of an Oklahoma City house when a man drove up, opened the door, and forced her inside. The woman said that this man blindfolded her with a dark handkerchief and drove her to an unknown location. Once they got to the location, she was taken to a room and forced to watch the torture of a woman. She told investigators that she didn't know who the victim was until she saw a picture of Carina Saunders on a news broadcast. During the torture, the man told this witness to tell her friends, "This is what happens when you do not cooperate with us." According to News 9, police said they believed the woman was working with drug and human traffickers, but she wasn't doing something they wanted her to do. They believed that Carina's torture and death was intended as a message. But police were quick to say that they didn't believe Carina Saunders was involved in these same illegal activities.
Scary.
It's very scary.
Yeah.
And, we're going to get into the area here of drugs, human trafficking. All of that is scary. The human trafficking side, that is so scary to me.
Really is.
We often talk about gangs and drug dealers and drug lords and things like that. And the fact that they're pretty much willing to do whatever they have to do.
Yeah.
To keep the business going, keep that money flowing in. If that means they have to eliminate competition, they might do that. If that means they have to send a message, they might do that. I can't imagine, Gibbs, that the human trafficking side, this criminal enterprise side, is that much different. The folks running those type of rings, my assumption is they're probably willing to do just about anything they have to do.
Yeah, I believe that's true.
And if they have to torture and kill someone and make another person watch to send a message, I don't know that they would hesitate.
I don't believe they would. It's all part of the scare tactic.
Well, and it's also, you're talking about a group that has no morals, no scruples whatsoever. If you're involved in the kidnapping of girls and women to be, sold or used as in the human trafficking trade, you're human slime.
Yeah.
So what do you care about doing this or that? You're already involved in things that are so heinous. What's going to stop you from doing whatever?
Yeah. By doing this helps you keep another dozen or two women in line. You're going to do it.
Eventually, the authorities released this woman who said she witnessed the torture and murder. Police contacted some individuals who said they were with this woman after she said she witnessed this torture. They confirmed she was in a state of extreme shock and she had bruises on both arms in the shape of fingers and hands. According to court documents, police determined Massey was the man who kidnapped this witness. It is important to note that Massey took a polygraph about the murder of Carina and he passed it. The person that performed the test told News 9 that at the time of the test, Massey answered truthfully, according to the polygraph, that he did not kill Carina, nor did he know who did, and had no other knowledge regarding her death.
That's conflicting. It's conflicting to what the witness says.
Yeah, it's conflicting because this witness said Massey was the one that was involved. Now, depends on how much faith you put in a polygraph test.
And into a witness.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. You have to factor all of that in.
Because you can imagine that the community is pressuring the police to solve this. This is a very brutal crime.
Yeah, extremely brutal on its own, right? So it would have the residents up in arms because they're alarmed. If someone is able to do this to this young woman, we're talking about a monster, right? That's able to dismember someone like that. Now you're talking about human trafficking. Okay. The alarm bells are ringing all over town because as a resident, I've got a daughter. My neighbor's got a daughter.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, Mr. Police Chief, policeman, what are you going to do to keep us safe? And you can just think about the editorials, the calls coming in saying, have you caught this person? What are you doing? It's a lot of pressure.
Yeah. There's a lot of things you don't want in your community, and a human trafficking ring is on top of that list.
Whose members are able to or willing to dismember a woman? Yeah. Yeah, we need to figure that out and eliminate that element from our community. On December 21st, 2011, the day after Massey's arrest, investigators searched the apartment where they believed the witness was taken. Court documents show police found blood spatter, and human hair, as well as a blood-stained machete at the Will Rogers Court apartment complex. Investigators reported that they could smell bleach inside, and it appeared the crime scene had recently been cleaned. Okay, let's rewind that for a second. We said there's a lot of factors here, right? Depending on the veracity of the people that are telling the stories. When you get in and you find blood spatter, human hair, and a blood-stained machete, you don't know exactly what happened there, but whatever it is cannot be good.
No.
Something bad went down in that apartment.
I do find it strange that if someone clean, they did a very bad job at leaving that stuff behind.
Yeah, it doesn't make a whole lot of sense to use Clorox, but leave a blood-stained machete and not get all the blood off the walls and all of that.
Right.
The human hair.
Yeah.
News 9 reported that court documents showed that Saunders' murder suspect, Jimmy Massey, confessed to witnessing the torture and murder in writing to another inmate. He decided to cooperate with the investigators to help identify who actually did torture and murder Carina. Massey says Southside Loco gang member Michael Knight, also known as the Monster, lived in that apartment with a woman named Rachel. I mean, Gibbs, how bad do you have to be as a gang member to get the nickname the Monster?
Pretty bad.
Yeah. I mean, I think you're about as bad as it gets, probably.
When you think about who could do something like that,
The Monster comes to mind.
Yeah.
Massey also told investigators a man named Luis Ruiz was there as well that night, and both of those guys were involved. But it was determined that the blood and hair at the apartment did not come from Carina Saunders.
Which is scary because it has to belong to somebody.
Yeah, and in your mind, you're thinking, okay, another somebody who most likely was dismembered as well.
I'd be like, man, what's going on in this town?
According to News 9, the investigators looked at 5 men who had been linked to Carina's murder at one point. Those men were suspect Jimmy Massey and persons of interest Alejandro Rojas, Michael Knight, Luis Ruiz, and Francisco Gomez. The problem is investigators didn't have enough evidence to move forward on any of these people. They didn't even have enough to move forward with a trial for Massey. So the charges were dropped against him, though he did remain in jail on his other charges. On February 27, 2011, the medical examiner classified Carina's death officially as a homicide. The cause of her death was listed as a violent death.
It's a strange thing to call that, but...
Well, it was a violent death, no
Yeah.
doubt about it. I just don't know that I've ever seen that listed as a cause of death. We've seen a lot of different things, homicide by unknown reasons or, strange things
Sure.
like that. But I mean, it's accurate. Obviously, no matter what happened, it was an extremely violent death. The medical examiner said the official report would be released eventually, but they had a few items pending. Police also investigated an apartment complex at 3500 South Harvey, known to be run by drug dealers. This was a complex that was known for having a history of crime, drugs. They felt that this could have been where Carina was murdered. In May 2012, a witness came forward claiming she witnessed a video involving Carina. This witness was a friend of Luis Ruiz and reported to have seen him and another man alongside Carina in the alleged footage. In the same month, another witness came forward to the Bethany police, claiming that she was kidnapped by Luis Ruiz and Jimmy Massey and forced to watch a video documenting the gruesome torture and murder of Carina. All right, so the plot thickens.
It does.
And it gets even nastier. So not one, but two people come forward talking about footage of Carina being murdered.
Yeah.
And again, linking Luis Ruiz and Jimmy Massey, people that have been linked to her murder already. And we talked about the public being shocked, right? This was a shocking murder. Now imagine they find out that there's a possibility that Carina's torture and murder was actually caught on tape. So now we're getting into the area of like a snuff film.
Yeah. Scary. Nasty.
And I'm sure everyone knows what that term means, but just in case, it's a video footage that depicts scenes of an actual homicide. And I don't know, Gibbs, why in the hell anyone would be interested in seeing something like that. I really don't know. The problem is there are people that are.
Yeah.
Very interested in seeing those type of things, that are willing to pay lots of money to witness things like that.
They go out onto that dark web.
Sick, man. Sick.
Really is.
But interestingly, the witness provided details about Carina's death, some which had not been disclosed to the public. So because of that, I think her statements were viewed as much more credible, right? She's giving details that the police are taking and saying, how could this person know what she's telling us unless she was actually there? Because we knew it, we just didn't release it. The witness reported that her kidnappers had attempted to force her into drugs and prostitution. This led police to believe the film was shown as an example to women about what would happen to them if they didn't cooperate.
Well, that's one way if you want to try to keep the women that you force into that arena to obey what you want them to do. If you don't, this is what's going to happen to you. That's scary stuff.
It is very scary. I mean, I think that's a tactic that is used in, all kinds of illicit activities, right? Threats of death will often make people do what you want them to do. It's a very persuasive tactic because I don't want to die. Now, I don't want to do what it is that you're trying to get me to do, but on the other hand, I don't want to die. I don't want to end up like this person that I'm seeing in this footage. On July 5th, 2012, an arrest warrant was issued for Luis Ruiz in connection with the murder of Carina Saunders. And at the same time, police charged Jimmy Massey again. Now, he was pretty easy to find. He was still in prison.
Right where they left him?
Right where they left him for an earlier conviction. On July 23rd, 2012, both Massey and Ruiz were officially charged with first-degree murder for Carina Saunders' death. Interestingly, while in custody, Jimmy had allegedly confessed to an inmate that he was involved in Carina's murder. In court documents, the inmate testified that Jimmy was involved in the homicide and described the fact that they cut the girl's arms and legs off.
Again, it's coming from an inmate.
It is.
So you know how that works.
On August 15th, 2012, the official autopsy was released to the public. So it took a pretty long time.
It really did.
For this to be released.
And maybe because they were holding back because certain information was in there that they didn't want to release and get it out to the public.
Yeah, I get that maybe a little bit more in a case like this where, there is dismemberment involved. Maybe some of that is very specific on where cuts were made, right, at what, so maybe only the killer or whoever did the dismemberment might know some of that information. The autopsy revealed that some parts of Carina's body were missing, including her hands, feet, forearm, and left breast. Additionally, some pieces of her clothing, which were last seen in the casino video, were not recovered. In the toxicology report, traces of tramadol were detected in her system. Tramadol is a pain-relieving drug, which is commonly used in surgeries, but the drug can also be accessed with a prescription. Due to the condition of Carina's body, the method by which the drug entered her system couldn't be determined.
It makes you wonder why they gave her the medicine. Was it to drug her to help capture her? Was it used during her torture for who knows what?
Yeah, I don't know how many torturers would use a pain reliever. It seems like it would be at odds at what they're trying to do, but maybe there's a reason for it.
Yeah.
Maybe to keep it so that the pain's not so much that the person goes into shock or passes out. I don't know.
Interesting.
During the next 5 months, there wasn't a lot of activity while investigators attempted to build their cases against Massey and Ruiz. But then Kenny Richards reemerged. 2 anonymous tips reported to authorities on January 7th and January 18th, 2013, claimed that Kenny was in possession of Carina's clothing and it was buried on his property. In that same month, the city of Bethany fired the chief of police for allegedly stealing evidence from the property room. It's something that they don't normally like.
Yeah, they pretty much frown on that.
Yep. They would prefer you not steal evidence. So Carina's case was turned over to the OSBI. They took the lead to get some new perspective, but I think Gibbs also to satisfy the public after they learned about the alleged corruption within the Bethany PD. On February 25th, 2013, the prosecutor dismissed the charges against Jimmy Massey and Luis Ruiz due to insufficient evidence. Basically, there was no concrete evidence linking the 2 men to the death of Carina. It was determined that the testimony provided by the witness was unreliable. Although the witness provided detailed information on the film's contents, which did seem to align with the method of Carina's murder, the testimony made by the witness was questionable. Not only did this witness have a history with drugs and a criminal record, and her statements had changed over time. Ruiz was released from jail, and of course, Massey had to stay in for his other charges. But think about this Massey guy. Yeah, he's in jail / prison, whatever, for other offenses.
Right.
But they've tried to get him twice for this murder, and they can't do it.
Yeah. He's like, man, I'm just trying to do my time for this other charge, and everybody keeps pulling me in on this.
A wrongful arrest lawsuit that was filed in 2014 by Luis Ruiz was finally settled in 2016 by the Bethany Police Department. Luis claimed that investigators ignored his alibi and that they coerced Jimmy Massey to confess to the charges. Eventually, the police department settled with Luis for $50,000, but still insisted that they did nothing wrong.
We didn't do anything wrong, but take this $50,000.
Yeah, I mean, you and I have been involved in things like this in our professional life.
Right.
Sadly, sometimes it is more economical to pay a figure, whatever that figure is deemed to be, than to go through a drawn out, kind of protracted trial. That's just the nature of it.
Yeah, you have to weigh the cost factors.
On October 12th, 2016, the OSBI offered $10,000 for video evidence of Carina's murder. They also released the video of Carina, last seen alive, getting into the red Ford truck at the casino. In April 2017, Kenny Richards was arrested for drug possession. As a result of that arrest, the OSBI was dispatched to his former house. Reportedly, the police excavated for a few days around his yard and uncovered some pieces of clothing. Items found were a woman's shirt, jacket, sandals, and a knife. The items were sent to the OSBI lab, but no information has been released to the public about any findings. Kenny remains a person of interest. He has drawn some attention over the years since Carina's murder because of rumors he was attempting to pimp her out and force her to work in the porn industry, with him being her manager.
A lot of strange things there. The fact that they found some clothes and a knife buried in his yard. Strange.
Strange, but also very interesting, given the fact that a witness came forward, right, and said that he had her clothes.
Yeah.
And that they were buried on his property. And obviously that's what led police to do the excavation work.
Sure.
Records show that Kinney had called in to report the death of another woman. The woman displayed signs of trauma and assault. And you know that the Bethany PD had to be very suspicious of Kinney Richards during this time, but they had already arrested another person for the woman's death. In September of 2018, a private donor offered $50,000 for video evidence of the murder of Carina Saunders. In November of 2019, the OSBI filed search warrants to access Kyle Savage's Facebook account to view all the messages he sent. As investigators told the press, he had sent threatening messages to both Carina and Catherine in the past. Later that month, they filed for his cell phone records. Then in October of 2020, the OSBI filed a warrant for all of Carina's emails from her service provider. So, it seems like, maybe the OSBI is working on something here, but we don't really have any information about what's come from those warrants. The thing that really jumped out at me is that it took so long.
Yeah.
For someone to think about getting her emails.
Right.
And to try to access Kyle's messages or Catherine's messages or Carina's messages, because they knew way back then that this guy had sent threatening messages.
So why not do it then?
Right. I mean, that's really what jumped out at me is, okay, 9 years later, the light bulb is going to go off that, hey, maybe we should try to take a look at her emails.
And how successful are you going to be even getting those 9 years later, right? Is that company still around? I don't know what the law is on how long you have to house that type of information before you can just completely delete it.
Yeah, I don't either. But you can make the argument that the longer you wait to do anything, right, the greater the chance that whatever it is you're looking for is no longer going to be there.
Right.
And you can, make that about emails or video surveillance or any type of evidence. In late 2020, a sketch of a man was released to the public. The sketch was made based on the description of a man seen in the area behind the grocery store. At the time, police believe Carina's body was dumped in the field. The OSBI has claimed that the man is not a suspect in the crime, but rather an essential witness who could hopefully shed some light on Carina Saunders' case.
Now, again, if you knew that this man existed, why now? 2020? Why not back then?
Yeah, with this, I don't know when this description was brought to the authorities. Now, the other thing is, we have to keep in mind the OSBI took over this investigation
right
from the Bethany PD. Okay, well, maybe the Bethany PD at the time weren't on the ball as much as they would have liked to have been. I mean, the chief of police was allegedly stealing things from the evidence room. So,
well, that's true.
You can make that case.
And I think, they were pretty focused on the fact that they believed this had something to do with human trafficking.
Yeah, I would say that's true as well. But, even so, I will say the OSBI took over in like 2013. So I might be giving them more credit because they've still had it for 7 or 8 years. 7 years by the time we're talking about looking into this man, looking into her emails. You know me, I hate to second guess law enforcement, but I think we'd be remiss if we didn't ask some of those questions, or at least point them out.
Sure. Yeah.
So Gibbs, as we wrap up this case, we talked about a number of potential suspects, some who were charged with Carina's murder, some who were charged more than once. But the investigation into Carina Saunders' death has still not been resolved. We talked earlier about the pressure, the extreme pressure that the Bethany Police Department was under to make an arrest. I think there are a lot of people who would say it was that pressure that caused them to kind of rush this investigation, jump to conclusions that it definitely involved human trafficking or drug running or some type of, something like that, rather than investigating the actual evidence. So I don't really know how good the initial investigation was. I think what we do know is that prosecutors have never been able to take anyone really to trial. They just don't have sufficient evidence to link anyone to Carina's murder. It's been almost a decade since the Oklahoma teenager was brutally murdered and dismembered. Today, the reward money of $10,000 still stands for anyone willing to come forward with more information about her murder, even without the video proof. I know a lot of the rewards we talked about centered around wanting the video.
Right.
Because it was thought that her murder was videoed. We don't know that. People have alleged that to be true. This is a case that really blows me away, man. I got to be honest, because number one, just how horrific the murder was with the dismemberment and everything. All of these people that seem to be doing some things that you would have to say are on the shady side.
Sure.
Even the guy that is sending the threatening messages. Okay. That seems hinky to me.
It's really hinky.
Why are you doing that? Why are you putting yourself in that position?
Right.
If you didn't have anything to do with the murder? I'm not saying he did. I'm just saying, why do that?
Right.
Because it makes you
look really bad.
Look suspicious. Yeah. Or really bad.
And it's got to be a rough go for the parents and, Catherine, that, to this day, they still don't really have any solid answers.
Yeah. And then you add in all this human trafficking talk, which we know exists. We know it's a real problem. The question for me is, did her murder have anything to do with something like that? Or did the police investigation into that kind of take them away from what really happened? Does that make sense?
It does.
Because we've seen that in cases before. They get so locked in on an avenue. Okay, it must have something to do with this. Well, maybe it does, maybe it doesn't. If it doesn't, then you've really put kind of all of your eggs in that basket. And if this was someone who was obsessed with her, a one-off murder that had nothing to do with human trafficking, well, maybe we didn't go down that path. Maybe we didn't investigate all of those angles like we should have. Right. I don't know.
It's the unknown.
It is the unknown, and it's kind of why, a lot of people are fascinated with these types of unsolved cases, because there's so many different angles that you can take a look at. But, the bottom line is, I agree with you. Really feel bad for her family. I feel bad for Catherine, friends and family. They don't have the answers. Will they ever get the answers? I don't know. I hope so.
Hope so too.
But that's it for the case of the murder of Carina Saunders. Gibbs, we've got some voicemails. You want to check those out?
Yeah, let's hear them.
Hey, Mike and Gibby. This is Aaron out of Sacramento. You guys are doing a really good job as always. I just had an interesting case for unsolved, perhaps a suggestion. This happened back in the 50s. I think it either came across my Facebook or my Reddit feed. Anyways, it's the unsolved kidnapping of Donna Sue Davis. I think she was maybe under 2 years of age. I think it was a year and a half or 2 years, something like that. It's happened back in the 50s. It had everything that a cold case needs. It has everything that a cold case has. It's happened in Sioux City, Iowa. Hopefully I got that right. Basically, though, there are a number of run-ins of witnesses that people have with the suspect, and they all identify the same person, but there's no name to the guy, and it's just an interesting case, and everything that in the setting is very tight together. All the houses, everything there, and it's a really interesting case. It never got solved, and to this day, so it's just a really weird, bizarre case. Again, that was the case of Donna Sue Davis in the 50s in the state of Iowa. There's a couple articles about it, so yeah. Anyways, thanks, guys. Keep your own time ticking and keep your head on the swivel. Thank you. Bye-bye.
All right. Thank you very much, Aaron. We'll definitely check out that case.
Yeah, sounds good.
Hi, guys. This is Susan from Illinois again. I just was driving to work, and there was a guy literally standing on the side of the road, leaning against his car with a cast on his arm. And believe it or not, he was driving a Ford Pinto. Haven't seen one of those in years. And he had a tire off. So it was like he had a flat tire. And he was this really clean-cut looking guy. And I said, sorry, Ted Bundy. Hope you have a cell phone. You guys have made me so aware of things. And I just wanted to share that with you because it really was just a funny thing, I guess. But thanks for everything that you do and for making me extra cautious instead of being the person I would have been before and ask if he might have needed help. No way. Thanks. Stay safe, guys. And keep your own time taken.
Was that last Tuesday? Because I was up and I actually had a flat. And...
No, she said clean cut, good looking guy.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Sorry.
Okay.
Ted Bundy type.
Yeah, gotcha. Okay. I just want to make sure.
No, I think it's interesting because on the one hand, people might view it as, okay, well, we're saying don't help your fellow man or woman.
Right.
Not saying that at all. We're saying, okay, weigh the situation. I wouldn't want my wife to stop on the side of the road to help a man out with the tire. I wouldn't want it. I wouldn't be so worried about you because you could Jason Bourne him if he got, but again, 2021.
Yeah.
You got AAA. Okay. Do you have a cell phone? You know, you could ask from 6 feet away and keep the car running. I'd be okay with that.
Right.
But, you know, it's really just about kind of weighing what's going on. Now, the fact that it's a Ford Pinto, the guy's got a cast on his arm. He wants you to help him get a canoe out of the back of the Pinto. I don't know. I struggle with it because am I jaded? Am I too jaded that I don't trust anyone and therefore I'm not a helpful person? Or am I just being cautious?
Probably depends on what either show you watched the night before or what podcast you listened to.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I think everybody has to make that decision for themselves. I'll tell you right flat out, though, I don't believe everyone. Actually, I don't believe a lot of people,
Right.
but you know me, I'm just much more cautious nowadays.
Well, for sure, if he had a clown outfit on, I would have went right on by.
Yeah, I'm out. And if the two were standing together, Bundy and Gacy, I'm flooring it.
I might have to stop to take a picture.
Just find out
because
what's
it's
going
like,
on.
this is like, did something happen? Did I
Miss a convention, maybe?
Yeah. What's going on here?
Hi, Mike and Mike. This is Katie Doss. Just want you to know that I've enjoyed your podcast. I'm no longer able to listen to my podcast at work anymore. It takes one person to screw it up. But I'm given some time before I can binge listen to you again. I've binged for the beginning up until maybe 3 months ago. I'm still going to donate to you, and I wish you guys the best, and I hope you guys keep your time ticking as I'm trying to keep my time ticking too. And I'm very cautious of my surroundings. You never know where someone's going to come around, and never know what's going to happen. But I love you guys, and please keep it going. And I'm sorry I'm not able to listen to you, but I will contribute. And thank you for the mug. I love it. I gave it to my mom, and I got her listening to you too. So we love you guys. Thank you.
All right. We love you. We love your mom. So 2 things for me, Gibbs. Number 1, it does only take one person.
That one person, man, ruins it for everybody.
To screw it up for everyone.
Yeah.
Man, All right. Send us that person's name and address, and Gibby will go talk to them.
Remember that one time I brought that Mexican food into the office, and after that, we were no longer allowed to bring food into the office.
Yeah. The funny thing is it didn't have anything to do with food. It had everything to do with the after effects that Mexican had on you. But
It did have a bad, yeah.
But again, it only takes one.
Exactly.
And that was you.
Yeah.
Hi, Mike and Gibby. This is Brian from Portland, Oregon. Giving you guys a call, and you guys are talking about people talking on jail phone calls and how it's used against them. How could we not know? But when you actually make that call, it tells you that they're recording and can use it against you for prosecutions. Anyways, been a long time listener, years now since the beginning, and criminology as well. And keep up the great work, guys. Keep your own time ticking.
Well, thank you. And even more reason to think that some of these people are just dumb.
Yeah.
They're actually telling you on the call,
Hey,
we're recording this and we may use it to prosecute you.
they're like, nah, they're not going to listen to all these.
Yeah, Mom, go hire some hitmen.
Yeah.
We'll be fine. All right, everyone. That is it for another episode of True Crime All the Time Unsolved. So for Mike
And Gibby.
stay safe and keep your own time ticking.